All right, today we're going to be talking about adding a sequencer to our scene. So at this point, you should have a shot where you are, or your scene should be set up so that you are ready to focus in on creating your shots that you're going to be using for your final rendered scene. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating or making a sequencer. And the sequencer is basically a tool that's going to be used to basically contain and organize and arrange your shots. You're going to have one sequencer that's going to be like the master sequencer or the master sequence. And in that, you're going to have a variety of shots, which you will basically put in order. So if you're familiar with like editing software, where you are able to take a bunch of scenes and put them in order the way that you want, that's basically what we're going to be doing with our scene. So essentially what we're going to have is we're going to have cameras in our scene that represent the shot of the cinematic that we want to make, and then we're going to have three different ones and put those in order and render that out as basically three single cinematics. One cinematic with three shots basically within it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to cinematics, and when I click on this, we'll see that there's called a add level cinematic, add master sequence, add level sequence, add master sequence, and matinee. Matinee was the old version of the old version of the sequencer. The sequencer is actually a new tool. And what it's going to do is when we say add a level sequence, we're going to get a little icon in our scene. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to say it's going to tell me to save this, and it's going to give me this sequencer. So this sequencer is a separate UI and a separate tool. Now what I want is I want this to be treated as kind of my master. So over here I have a new level sequence right here. So this is my new level sequence, and it's represented by this icon of this clapperboard in the scene. Now, I'm just going to move that up. That doesn't matter where that is. It's just showing you that that exists in your scene. And so what I want to do here is I'm going to dock this down by my content browser because I'm going to be working here and here. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. Now what I want to do is I'm going to make a new scene. I'm going to make a new folder. And in that folder, I'm going to call this my final cinematic. So my final cinematic is going to contain all the different shots that I'm going to be using in my scene. Okay? So my final cinematic is going to contain the shots that I want to be using for my particular scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm in my final cinematic, and I'm going to go up to say new animation, and I'm going to say level sequence. Now I know I just created something called a level sequencer, and what I've got here, I'm going to call this I'm just going to call this my master. I'm going to go back. Let me bring that back up again. So here this is. I want to rename this. I'm just going to call this master. So I'm kind of I'm going to make another one. Animation. Level sequence. And I'm going to call this shot 1. Shot 0, 1. Now, as I move through back and forth and through this, I have a master. I'm going to go back, and I have shot 1. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to take my shots, shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, on and on and on, or I can name them whatever I want. And then I can build within a master this sequence of these shots. So my master is really going to hold the different shots that I want within it. And that is going to be that is going to be in something called a shot track. So I'm going to be inside my master, and inside of that, what I want to do is I want to go into that master here, and I want to add a shot track. And this allows me to go back and add the different shots that I have in my here. So I have shot 1. And so what this is going to do is this is going to tie into, I have some other shots in my sequence already. So what I want to do is I'm going to name this something else. So I'm going to call this, so I can see it better. So when you do it, you won't have extra ones. So I'm going to call this angel. I'm just going to call this my angel scene, angel shot. So as I have that, what I'm going to do is, in my master, I could choose now angel shot from there, and I'll be using that in just a little bit. But for now, what I want to do is, once I have that, what I want to do is I want to actually create my angel shot. So I'm going to go into that. I'm going to double click into that shot. And here I am, I'm looking over here. And what I want to do is I want to set up my workspace to allow me to have a view on my left and a view on my right, so I can have my perspective view over here, and then what I'm going to see through the camera over here. So I'm going to go down to my drop down here. I'm going to go to layouts, and I'm going to go to two panes side by side. Over here I have my perspective view, and this is my default view. And over here, I'm going to have what's called my cinematic viewport, which isn't going to look much different, but right now it's going to want to look through different cameras. Now, what I want to see is my shots that I'm going to be assigning here. Okay, so right now it's just lit or unlit. This is unlit. It's the same because I don't really have a camera yet. But here I am in my scene. Now notice when I'm in this view, I have these extra elements here, these extra elements because I'm using a cinematic viewport. If I go back to default, I don't really have all that, but if I go to cinematic, I get this extra controls. Now these controls are going to work with my timeline, which is down here, which is where I'm going to build my camera views and that sort of thing. Now this is a timeline, and this timeline has in and out times, and this yellow one is going to control the playhead, so I can actually drag this across, and all of these are different frames. So it's going to be playing back at 30 frames per second. So if I was to hit this play button, it's going to play at 30 frames per second. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an animation of that's basically 5 seconds in length. So right now, I'm going to increase this a little bit to 300 frames. This gives me a little bit more space to work within, even though I'm only going to be using this space. Now I can control the beginning and the end points by either dragging across here or clicking in a value or typing in a value. I want this to end at frame 150. So 150 is 30 frames per second. That's 5 seconds of animation. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5. I'm counting a little fast. There's 5 seconds of animation right there. So what I want to be able to do is I'm going to be adding a camera to this scene where I want it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate in through this scene using my camera, and I want to place I want to get into the position where I basically want to decide what is my shot going to be. So what I want to do is I want to kind of do a reveal. So I might do something like this. So if I look at that in the light, you can see that I've got this blue rock, or this rock here with some light on it. So I'm going to go from here, this is what my plan is, I'm going to go from here to something like this. Now, I want to actually use some tools. So up here, because this is a cinematic viewport, I'm going to use my grid 3, and I want to kind of work with the rule of thirds here. And what I want to end up with is this being kind of in this location, maybe something like this. And this is where you're going to take the time to really get things where you want it. Now, if I'm working in this scene and I want to hide kind of like these, you know, how everything gets highlighted. If I hit the G button, I can turn off some of these tools or turn them back on. So like, for instance, all these little icons in my scene, if that's bugging you, you can hit G and turn those on and turn those off. So what I want to do is I'm going to work with my unlit view just to kind of get things a little bit more. So I want to hide down here in the grass a little. Maybe something like this. All right. So here's a nice view. So I want to lock this in, but I want to create a camera at this point. So what I'm going to do down here is I'm simply going to go down and I'm going to say create a new camera set at this current spot. So here I've created a camera. It's called the Cinema Camera Actor up here. So what I want to do is I'm going to quickly rename this. I'm going to say edit. I'm going to say rename, and I'm just going to put on the end Angel Cam. All right, and that way I know which camera I'm looking at. So this is what I'm looking at here. Now I'm not going to adjust everything in this particular scene because there's a lot of things that I can adjust, but I'm going to use the settings that are already with it, and then I'm going to go back and I'll adjust some of the fine details. But right now I'm just going to kind of get this where I want it. Now what I'm going to be working with is I'm actually going to be working with the transform tools, and we're not going into great detail of how all the bells and whistles on this. All we want to do is really just get 2 keyframes set, and the keyframes are going to say, look, at this particular key 0, have the camera in this particular position, which is going to be locking in these transform values, the location, rotation, and scale. And we're just going to do that as a single click. So I'm making sure that I have it at 0. Not somewhere else, so it's not up there. I could set it there if I wanted to, but I just want to use it. I just want to start at 0. And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to select this and hit the S key. The S key is going to put a little icon or a little keyframe here, which is actually keyframing all of these values at this particular location. Now what I want to do is move my playhead, which is this bar here, or I can drag this or put in at 150. Actually, I'm going to do 149 because 150 is the end of the frame. So I'm going to say 149, be in this new location. So I want to move my camera now to that new location to where I want my new camera to be. Now this just created an error for me. So what I want to do is I'm going to have to go back because I moved my camera the wrong way. So I'm going to move my camera using a different tool. I'm going to go over here in this scene. I'm going to make sure it's selected. I'm going to hit the F key and I'm going to frame in on it. So here's my camera. This is where it's located. I'm going to move this with this tool, or if I'm over here, I can use this. I can use the right mouse button and the tools like I would if I was working in the actual game. So I'm going to use the W buttons. I'm going to back this up a little bit. So I'm going to set it up so it looks something like this. So I can either move the camera in this view, moving it around, or I don't want the rock, I want that cinema camera Angel Cam. And because it brings it up on both sides, and so what I want to do is I want to be able to see that. So here's that camera. So I've moved it around, and this is the shot that I kind of want to frame in. And I want to lock that value in. So I'm going to hit S again. And notice that now there's keyframes here. And I should be able to scrub between that from here to there. But that didn't work too well. So what I'm going to do is it's spinning around. So I'm going to have to fix that.